Okay, this lesson is about parallel lines and perpendicular lines. So if you remember, the equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. So the thing that's going to tell us if the line is parallel or perpendicular is the slope. So parallel lines, that means that they are like this. So they run right next to each other and they never intersect. So if you think about it, if this was like on a coordinate grid like this, these lines, if we went from this point to this point and this point to this point, it would be the same, we'd be going the same distance up and over. So the rise over run would be the same as if we went rise over run here. So that means that if for parallel lines, that means that they have the same slope. And that's m in our equation. Now, up here on the notes, it says, example, the following equations represent parallel lines since their slopes are equal. So we have y equals 3x plus 11 and y equals 3x plus 11. So even if this was like 10, they would still be parallel. So the b value doesn't matter. You can put in any value of b that you want because that's just moving the slopes, or that's moving the lines up and down. So even if there was like another line down here like this, it would still have the same slope, but the b values are different, and that's okay. So if the number in front of the x is the same, then they are parallel. Now with perpendicular, those are lines that intersect at a 90-degree angle. So this is 90 degrees. And even if we had ones that were diagonal, so let's say that this is our first line and then this was our second line. Let's see, that looks like it's about 90 degrees. So let's say that this is on a coordinate plane like this. And these are our lines. Let's say that this slope is up 1 over 1. Let's say it's up 2 over 1. And then this slope going from this point to this point, this would be, let me do it the other way, like this. This would be down 1 over 2. So basically, with perpendicular lines, their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So we will also call this a negative reciprocal. So if we look at the slopes here, we have 3 over 2, and then we have negative 2 over 3. So we take 3 over 2 and we flip it upside down. That's the reciprocal part. And then we make it negative, and that's the negative part. So anytime you want to find the perpendicular line, you just flip the fraction and make it negative. So if, for example, we had 2, we would have to put that over 1. Then we can flip the fraction and make it negative. So that's what you do if it's a whole number. Now we're going to do these examples. So this says if line L has a slope of 3/4, then any line parallel to line L has a slope of 3/4, because if it's parallel, the slopes are the same. And then perpendicular would be negative 4 thirds because you flip it over and you make it negative. The next one, any line parallel to y equals negative 2x plus 5 would be negative 2 because they're the same. Any line parallel to y equals 5x minus 4 has a slope of 5 because they're the same. And then the next one is 3/5 because it's y equals 3/5 x plus 11, so it's just the same slope. For perpendicular, we can put this one over 1, so we have y equals negative 6x minus 3. So we flip it, and it was negative, so we changed the sign, so now it's positive. So remember, this is called the negative reciprocal. On the next one, we have y equals 1/4 x plus 2. So we flip it over and make it negative. So on that one, you could have just written negative 4. On the next one, we have a line perpendicular to y equals x minus 9. I'm going to put the 1 over 1 in front of this. So this would be, if we flip it, it's still just 1 over 1, but we would make it negative. So we could just write negative 1. Now we're going to look at these examples and say if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither by looking at their slopes. So here we have 3 and negative 3. So these lines would be neither because they aren't the same. Or negative reciprocals of each other. The next one we have negative 2x plus 5 and negative 2x plus 3. So these ones would be parallel because the slopes are the same. The next one we have 1/7 and negative 1 as our slopes. So on this one, these would be neither because they're not equal and they're not negative reciprocals of each other. So if we had 1/7 and we reciprocated that, that would be 7 over 1, and we make it negative. So this would have to be negative 7, but it's not, so it's neither. Then we have negative 3/8 and 8/3. If we take negative 3/8 and we flip it over, that would be 8/3. This one's negative, so that one has to be positive. So these are perpendicular because the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. Next we have 5 and negative 5 for our slopes. So 5, remember we could write that as 5 over 1. So we'd have to flip the fraction and then make it negative, and those are not the same. So this would be neither, because they're not equal and they're not negative reciprocals. And then the last one, we have 1/2 and 1/2. So these are parallel because the slopes are the same. Okay, and on your homework, you'll have graphs where you'll have questions where you need to graph the original line and then graph a parallel line for the parallel lines homework and a perpendicular line for the perpendicular line homework.